Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, something a little bit different. We have taken the time machine and we've stored it away in a studio closet. We're giving Rex Reel the night off for a special presentation of Outtakes with Rex Reel. We have a studio guest. As cinematic class is about to begin, and your professor is in. Greetings, salutations, and other sundry affair. I am your cinematic professor and purveyor of truth in movies. Welcome to tonight's show, something a little bit different. You know, it was probably, oh Lord, I don't want to date myself here, but a good number of years ago that we brought in on the show a local author from Bethel Park, Dominic Bianco, who I'm sure many of you know, and he had just published, I believe, the third book in his trilogy of a Bethel Park superhero. So we brought him on to the show and we did an interview about his book and what have you. And now I'm sure most of you know that Dominic has gone on to become editor of Jurassic Magazine. So we're doing kind of the same thing again, but in a little bit of a different flavor. No superheroes tonight. We're entering the world of the macabre. We have another local artist coming right here from Bethel Park. And please help me welcome David Fairhead to the show. David, welcome.
Thank you, Rex. I
David
appreciate it.
has put out, I'm going to slide your glasses off here. David has put out a new book. This is not his first by any stretch of the imagination. And it looks like this. It's called Dead Memories. So already you can tell that this is not going to be something that's very superhero-ish. And those of you that have been following my reviews over all these decades know that I love horror anthologies. Those are a whole lot of fun as far as movies are concerned. This book, I think we could call it a horror anthology. I think that's fair enough. Even though some of the stories in there, I don't think we'd classify as horror. We'll get to that in just a little bit. So
I'm glad you recognize that.
Yeah, I did. You can't help it. So let's get to the meat and potatoes of this thing, David. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
And I guess we should start off by saying, just who is Dietrich Valhalla?
Dietrich Valhalla.
Yes.
Well, he could be heard before he could be seen. He was on the radio show as one of my characters, and he was created to annoy a guest who was a horror director. And big shout out to Johnny Daggers, who is now J.D. Ellenberger. And he fell in love with the character and had me have Dietrich Valhalla interview him, who is basically, he looks like Toit from Indiana Jones, a little different, not as handsome as Toit.
Okay.
Glasses, cloak, top hat, and he collects weird artifacts and stories, videos, and things of the macabre to see if he can better himself and empower himself with these things and use them. But he's just kind of a goofball, very aloof.
But he's crucial to this novel as he
Unfortunately.
kind of runs
Yes.
the gamut through all these stories in
Yes.
some way, shape, or form, does he not?
Yes, he was like the worst possible person you could pick to host your show, because he will ruin it. And in doing that and ruining it, he also creates danger, because he's playing with toys or people from beyond, and he doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah.
We probably should let's open the door a little bit more for some people here. Dead Memories is a rather unique blend of both fictional stories, which tend to lean into the horror vein, and also there's, for lack of a better term, I guess you would say, reality stories in here as well. David, how did you go about picking which of those stories would make this compilation?
Well, that's strange. I can't really. I was writing another book. Usually I'm writing something else, which is a pure horror novel. Then I got sick. And I was in the hospital this last year. I got discharged, but I was in there for a good 5 months. And deathbed type situation, bad, worse than I knew. 5 blood transfusions, lots of medication later. I started jotting things down, and mostly for my own benefit and, care. And then things prior to my experience and what put me there and what I experienced in the hospital, it was dark. I was alone a lot, and a lot of things happen when you're on medication. And 5 blood transfusions, your mind plays with you, but you see things. And sometimes other people see things too and corroborate what you've seen. And I was like, there's a story here. And I'm not going to waste my time being sick. So I wrote it down, and I wrote the one story in there that you probably know, which is a true story. There's 4 stories based on truth. 2 that are absolutely true that I experienced.
Those 2 they're
weird.
No, I was going to say they're rough to get through, and I think that's because I knew you went through this. So I kind of knew what your story was, and as I'm reading this, I'm going, oh man, this is...
Yeah, you weren't too far away when all this was going down.
Yeah, this is kind of tough to swallow down.
You're not alone. My wife won't read particular stories from this one.
Yeah, I don't blame her. Do you try to convey that feeling in those stories? Is that what you wanted to?
I wanted
that
to.
Unease?
I was challenged myself to become a better writer by not just having different narrators. There's 4 narrators to this book, and they get involved in the stories. And I wanted to test my real feels, meaning I created a horror drama or horrorama, if you will. I created that because I wanted it to seem real. The stories I completely made up, I put in a realistic atmosphere. And where I learned that, and you'll appreciate this, why I probably write horror and still love horror movies. And I'm going to go back to one of the best, and I call it a horror movie, even though you can go to Red Bank, New Jersey, and you check out the 12 Days of Terror, Jaws. Jaws. You take that one scene, and this is kind of my focal point for everything I write in horror. Get everybody real comfortable. You're on the beach. You can smell the suntan lotion. You hear the flapping of the cabanas. Roy Scheider's sitting right here. What's on the radio? The most innocent thing of all time. Olivia Newton-John, I Honestly Love You. You hear the chatter on the blanket towels next to you, And there's Alex Kintner taking his raft and going out. And it couldn't be a better scenario, a more comfortable scenario. We all are in that scenario on vacation, or have been, at the beach. And then the worst possible monstrosity, heinous act of murder takes place in front of everybody. You don't see it coming. I mean, because you're seeing Jaws, you might see it coming if you read the book. But you get taken out of that comfort zone. We all do. In everyday life, we are in our comfort zone. And suddenly, that same day, the day that I ended up in the hospital that day, I was walking my dogs. I was at work. I had a whole day at work. I went to church. It was on an Ash Wednesday to make my grandmother happy. I got ashes on my head. And my mother, I was on the phone. I had a great day. And then just bam, my sickness kicked in full gear. It just took me out of all that comfort. And so I decided to unleash it. And it was cathartic doing it. But I had a bunch of other stories I was sitting on that were undeveloped. And this cover by Tanya Mendez, good friend, been through a lot herself. We've been going through weird things at the same time together. She was sending me these photos. I'm like, let's make a coffee table book. Now, this is before I got sick. So I had all these little blurbs and stories for a coffee table book with photos. One thing led to another, and each story developed into these pictures, these stories, 13 tales, and some longer than others. 2 or 50 pages, some are 14,
Yeah.
But I'm glad I don't expect everybody to like the entire book. Like you said you like parts of it. You'll take some things from it. Some things are not for you. That's essentially what it is.
Well, like I said, we were kind of close to what you were going through, so those stories were a little bit, unnerving. And those stories brought in a very unique character, Boozle the cat. Now, is Boozle the cat the result of very heavy medication, or is he more spectral?
I should tell that story, shouldn't I?
Go ahead.
I got sick initially 5-6 years ago and hospitalized. I was there for about 5 days ICU. And I was, on medication, but I was still talking. And my mother and her boyfriend Eric came to visit. My wife Denise was there all the time. And they would hear it from the nurse, Dave is talking about seeing this cat. And literally sitting in my chair, or sitting in the bed in the hospital room, I would see this orange, fluffy, cute cat that would come visit me while I was sleeping, and talk to me and say, "Hi, I'm Boozle," and would talk to me. "You're going to be okay. You're going to get out of here." Now, of course, that's medication. It's everything. Who knows? And then I'd see him disappear, and I would tell the nurse. Her name was Chris. I was like, "There's been a cat in here, and I keep seeing it disappearing that way. What's over there?" She's like, "The next room, there's a window there, and there's no cats in the ICU, Dave." Okay, but I saw a cat. And I also imagined that I broke out of my bed, went to the break room and stole an ice cream cake from the fridge and ate the staff's lunch. And I told my mom and my wife, I'm like, you gotta get me out of here. They're gonna be mad about this. And there's a cat. No cats, no ice cream cake. There was never an ice cream cake. And I was beside myself with am I really seeing this? And then at night, there was construction going on, and there was all kinds of noise and racket, and there was also a dripping sound. And in my head, I heard an animal licking out of a bowl of water. That's what it sounded like to me. Like, it's here. I called my wife, and I was like, "It's in my room right now. I can't turn to my bed, but there's a cat behind me right now." "David, go back to sleep." All right. Well, the guy across the hall who had been there for a while, he had left. He was discharged. And I'm talking about this cat for a couple of days. And my mother's boyfriend went to the cafeteria to eat lunch, and he was in there with the people that were discharged, the guy and his father, or the father and son. And the guy said he saw a cat in his room. This is before Eric came up, and I didn't know he had seen it. But it validated what I had been saying this whole time. So there's a cat haunting the ICU of St. Clair Hospital.
There you go.
That's all I can say, because other people saw it, and I wrote it down.
I hate to say this, but there is an orange fluffy cat that roams our street too, and this cat is. I think it's blind. It's either partially blind or it's deaf.
He's very old.
Because you can sneak up on this cat. I mean, even the chipmunks and stuff run circles around it, so it's not totally there. But
poor guy. He's a friend of mine, and I'm not a cat person.
Yeah, when Boozle came along in the story, I went, I think I know where this cat came from. When you write stories like this,
I had to break out the props. Props.
Everybody of importance.
This is the always
has one. That's it.
This is the beverage enhancer, brought to you by Rex Real.
There you go. When these stories come out, and like I said, you have the two different kind in there. I guess a two-part question. First off, when you tell the stories or write the stories that are very, it's the cup that makes the drink,
I know.
When you write these stories, do the people you bring into them, because they're all real people, do they? In
some of them, yeah.
Are they okay with that?
I get the okay.
You do get the okay.
Yeah,
okay.
With my stories, if the guy in the hospital that I met the second time that builds his own lightsabers is a real guy. Galen Starkiller on Facebook. You can look him up. He's got real videos with these lightsabers. Just happened to be my roommate. I'm a Star Wars guy. If anybody listens to my podcast, Kettle Whistle Radio, they know I'm a Star Wars guy.
Right.
And he was my roommate. He's this huge dude that's in there, more machine than man. His leg was all enhanced with metal. He was messed up from an accident. He's a great guy, but he happened to construct lightsabers. So at 5 a.m. they transfer me to his room, and it's 84 degrees because he liked it warm in there. And he's blasting gangster rap music. I'm like, oh my God, what's happening here? And I'm okay with all of the above because I wasn't going to sleep any of the time. And I hear lightsaber sounds. Like, none of this makes sense. But I'm like, I have to write this down. Nobody's gonna believe it. The weirdest story is mine, I think. And nobody, the weirdest parts I actually had to cut because nobody's gonna believe that. Yeah. But Galen Starkiller, the lightsaber man, he got me through a lot when I was sick, and he made me laugh. Yeah. And you can read about that. Times we went through a lot at the same time. So
we were talking before the camera started rolling, and found out that some of the material that spawned the horror story was actually, for example, we were talking about the one story where this little boy finds a satellite radio, and the satellite radio is actually predicting the future or showing him the future.
Yeah.
And as he's trying to tell his friend, this is what's coming, that, she naturally thinks he's lost it. But you had told me that this story was actually based kind of sort of off a real character and had to do with autism.
Yeah, well, it's yes. So a real person. The names in that case are changed, but
Sure.
a culmination of several people. He's an autistic child, high school, not really a child, but I have a lot of experience with autism in my family on various levels, and this kid intrigued me. I made him up, but Alison Starlock is a director who directed The Apology horror movie, fantastic film on Shudder. I think it's still on Shudder. She wrote the foreword, and she has autism in her family too. She loved that story, related to it, because this kid, the friend, has a girl as a friend who is his guardian, and he in turn drives her crazy in a good way and a bad way. But it's her only friend, and she's his only friend, and he happens to find this satellite phone that's getting calls from somewhere else. And that's up to the reader to figure out where, and other people get involved. Doesn't always end up well for everybody. But I was always intrigued because that happened to me. I found a satellite phone once that was operational on the train tracks, the trolley tracks right here in Pittsburgh. It did work. I don't know who I was talking to, but I have a witness. Anyway, but I'm glad that one was kind of, a lot of it, I even have an intermission in the book because I want to give people a break before the heavy stuff hit later on. I thought it was funny, an intermission in a book, and I can tell you where I got that from. Makes no sense, but when I was a kid, I watched A Bridge Too Far with my dad, and it was before they knew how to take care of commercial airtime. They had an intermission on TV for a half hour, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll put it in the book. Give them a break. Let them put the thing down. Go walk away for a while. It makes no sense, but why not? You gotta tell people what to do these days, when to take a break.
It's good. It all makes sense.
I hope this can also make people laugh and chuckle at certain turns, because a lot of it is pretty lethal. I guess I should say, if you're into demons, monsters of all sorts, aliens have several twists in this. They do. But the whole thing is driven by witches. Mm-hmm. Each story. This could be read, I know how you're reading it, you could read this as a whole, and the pictures, again, done by my friend Tanya, and you'll get more out of it if you read it in succession, because then in the end, including the afterword, it all comes together. Mm-hmm. Or if you just like a couple of stories.
I kind of chuckled to myself when I was reading some of your stories, because good old Dr. Peeler comes up. Yes. And Dr. Peeler, in case you don't know, is also David's creation, and it might be kind of good now to maybe
segue,
talk a little bit about him and show him and explain why you felt compelled to put him into this anthology.
He's just this character that he took a life on its own. Sometimes you write something and you don't realize that other people like him more than you do. He was going to be so temporary, and now he's developed. He's in this, he's in it. This is an ongoing series. This is issue 1, issue 2 is coming out. Dr. Peeler came about working at convention, like almost everything that I do, meeting people. Networking at conventions, folks. That's where you will meet the right people. I was working my table, selling my first couple of books that are here, and Jess Weary, who is now my co-host on the Kettle Whistle Radio, came up to me and asked me if I wanted to meet her dad, because her dad does this incredible art with Universal Monsters, and that's Robert Hoagland. Look up him on Facebook, folks. His art is amazing. And we had done conventions together, seeing each other here and there. Then we started talking, because she was in therapy, I was in therapy. We've had bad therapy, and we're no longer in therapy. I'm just saying that now. But bad therapists we're like, let's talk about a bad psychiatrist. What could happen there if maybe he's not bad, but he is a demon. Now, you don't know, even reading the first issue, if the people are bad or if he's bad, what he's after, but he feeds off their negativity. And there are other demons that actually will be clients walking in there too, because demons have acclimated themselves in society in this world. So
And then how did he end up going from the comic book into your anthology?
he was first in he was in prose first, and then you actually finally see what he looks like in here, like because Robert Hoagland did he drew him, and I was just like, yeah, that's him. That's what I see in my head. And his daughter Jess Weary is one of the main characters, and Robert's just amazing. And he just drew these guys how I asked. I storyboarded it, and he drew them. I said, take liberties. And he came so close. I'm like, yeah, that's what I want. Leave him.
You brought some other pictures too. We should.
Yeah, this is all him.
Yeah, let's show those too.
This is Robert Hoagland's art. Now this guy, this is Nasher. Nasher shows up first in, I feel like, Carrot Top, my props here. Shows up in Dwelling in the Dark. He is one of the demons that shows up, and this is him in Advent of Autumn. This is him, and he's meeting the three main characters that he uses children from many different ways. He's attracted to them in bad ways, meaning he wants to use them for food, but he also will do their bidding. If he likes what their ideas are, he'll spare them, if they come up with some cool ideas. But he's not the best guy. And I will tell you this, what's really cool about Nasher is he is going to be showing up in here as a client of Dr. Peel. Because he needs to stop eating kids.
Give us the order of these books and how they...
First.
Yeah.
All right, Fall of Tomorrow, Demon Apocalypse, Pittsburgh, New Jersey, Ohio, West Virginia is where it takes place.
This is not an anthology. This is
a
novel.
Yeah. Okay. And I wrote it after I was very inspired by the book Dracula, just how it was written in the form of journals. This is not quite like that. Who can write that? But I tried, which I don't recommend to anybody on their first outing. It's difficult. But it's a series of a collection of sort of journals, one person to the next, telling them how to destroy or what to do when they confront a certain demon in a certain town where they're located, and they leave those notes behind for the next person to follow up. And they all accumulate. Then all the survivors meet at the end, and we'll leave it at that.
Okay.
And a lot of them cross over in this. This is a companion, but it can be separate. These are all short stories, and they all go together, and they're all companion to this, same characters, timelines.
So this is an anthology.
Yeah,
also.
this one is. Yeah, but it's mine. It's all mine. I don't have anybody else in this. It's just all my stuff. And it's before, during, and after the Fall of Tomorrow.
Gotcha.
But again, these are short stories. There's a lot of science fiction in here. There's a lot of horror. It's mostly horror and science fiction. Not a lot of dramedy. Where this one I poke fun and I call it, what did I say? Horrorama. Right here. This one's more feels, like you said. I hit upon real topics, real problems, and then honestly, it was based on. I wrote it down here. What the book is actually. There's three feels. That it's not a feel-good book. We'll just say that. It's not a feel-good, but essentially a reader will feel good that their life is better than what's going on in here. So in that sense, it really is. But yeah, if you're into aliens, witches, demons, and there's other monsters, you didn't get to them yet because the final story...
Now see, I had to admit to Dave before we sat down, he said, how far did you get in the book? I said, I'm just starting chapter 13, which is the last chapter of the book. And then that's when he tells me, oh, that wraps everything up and that puts everything together. I said, well, I'm not there yet, so don't
afterword
ruin it for me.
The afterword actually features one of the characters telling truths.
Then I'll have to read that as
well. I wanted to, in a sense, I like putting Easter eggs in everything I do so that you get something back. Interactive. I don't make video games, but I can make a book interactive if I wanted to.
If any of you are sitting there saying, that guy sounds awfully familiar, it's probably because in addition to being an author and writing these novels, David is also the producer and owner, kingpin, whatever, of Kettle Whistle Radio.
Yeah.
So maybe we ought to take a few minutes here just to let people know what Kettle Whistle Radio is all about.
Yes.
And what you go ahead and do on your show there.
300 episodes and 16 years later. We have interviewed so many independent and famous directors, actors, writers, authors, tons of bands. We love music. Sean Feldbush, one of my co-hosts, and now Jess Weary. And before that, it got started with Heather Taddy, Paranormal State fame. She put me on the map. And I also have to thank somebody else, John Towers, who essentially, you don't know about this comic book I did way before called WZWA, World Zombie Wrestling Association, which I send to people. If they hit me up, I have all 4 issues. I send them for free in email format. But yeah, he got me started, cut my teeth with that. But yeah, and he started me podcasting. And Heather was one of my first guests. And I got comfortable because the give and take with her, she was easy to like talk to, and we talked horror, we talked paranormal, and Jane's Addiction, we talked music. One thing led to another, then she went off and she's still busy, God bless her. And I was left with Kettle Whistle Radio. I'm like, I'm gonna go on with this, this is cool. And I started getting hits, and hits became 1,500 downloads. Like, what's going on here? And it's just been a labor of love. And now we're on Spotify and iHeartRadio station, and you out there may be on the show as well. If you're in a band, you're a creative, I want to talk to you. We all do, and it's just a lot of fun. And I can't believe the direction it's going and has gone. We have Walking Dead people on there. And some of the bands, some of my favorite bands have been on there. Just getting the bass player from White Zombie, Sean Usolt, back in the day, that was like killer. And just little things. And I was green. I mean, you could laugh at me for the first 100 episodes. I was terrible. I know that.
Hey, I forgot to mention at the front of the show, but I should mention it now that Outtakes with Rick's Reel is sponsored by the House of Feruza Barbershop and Cigar Lounge. And Sam, if you call him up, he'll make you style and profile and look good. And when you go down to the Cigar Lounge, boy, I've never been there and had a bad time. It's just a great time, especially for guys. Good libations, real good cigars, and you owe it to yourself to give them a call, find out what's going on down there, and make sure that you're looking best that you possibly can. And speaking of looking the best that you possibly can, this is the book we're talking about. It's called Dead Memories. And David has put this together. It hasn't officially launched. They're having a launch party later in the summer. So you're hearing all about this before the official, spring thing goes up, which is pretty good. But still,
it's available.
Even though you can get this book at several different ways. David,
Yes.
tell them people who are interested in this how to go about getting it.
My website with all my writing, as well as all the shows, is fairlydarkproductions.com. You can get it there. BurningBowlPublishing.com is where all my stuff is. And we have a storefront now. It's called The Painted Tree, which if you're in the Pittsburgh area, it's in Homestead at the waterfront where the old Bed Bath & Beyond was. And it's, and it's really cool, but it's high end. It's a boutique. I don't know how they let me in there, but I'm in there, and it's a cool place. I recommend it. Again, Homestead, PA, if you're in the Pittsburgh area.
So if they're down there, they can stop in and get a copy.
Yeah, all my books
Otherwise,
will
they
be
can
there.
pick one up online.
100%. These sold out. I have to replenish them, but by the time they get there, there'll be more.
Sounds good. So the name of the book again is Dead Memories by David Fairhead. David, thank you very much for swinging by the studio and
I appreciate
talking
it,
with
man.
us today.
And
We'll get back to the regular format on the next episode, but I thought this book was good enough, and it is local, so we wanted to help David out as much as we possibly can on this. This is an eerie book. If you like Tales of the Macabre, you will really enjoy this. And now that you have learned what you have learned, here endeth your lesson.